My, I've had, quite a, past, I guess, as you found out a little bit, Kathy, I guess.
Well, I just know that you were in the Navy and you used to be in Columbia, is that right?
Columbus, yeah.
Columbus, Ohio.
That's where I was last under treatment. My last appointment was back in February or March, maybe. I can't really remember. Somewhere around in there. Actually, I think I had an appointment in March, but I left. I had to leave in February unexpectedly, and I just never, it's been until now that I've, gotten stable, and transportation has been an issue since June, and it's finally been taken care of. So
you have transportation now?
Right. So I'll be able to, make it to treatment, or if we're able to set up some kind of a schedule or whatever, I'll be able to make it. And everything's going pretty smooth in that direction. So.
And you've got housing out in Happy Camp?
Yes. Yes, I rent a place out there.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, do you have roommates, or you live alone?
I live alone.
Okay.
Considering a roommate.
Yeah. That's what the expenses, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what brings you to see me? How can I help?
Well, I didn't even really I've known ever, since I sought treatment, back in '97. I've had a problem with, depression. That's what they were saying it was back then. But it wasn't really until, I came to the VA and started trying to seek some help with that, I really discovered that what I may be suffering from is post-traumatic stress disorder. And, I started doing a lot of research on that, and then I started going, when I first came to the VA, they denied me any kind of services, psychiatric services, because I flat out refused to take any pharmaceuticals. And the psychologist and I there would get into tiffs, and who did not respect my religious beliefs and practices, and they chose to treat me like a drug addict instead of a person who chose to use cannabis instead of pharmaceuticals as for relief of their symptoms, for effective relief of their symptoms. And so at that time I was just, starting to find out that I might have post-traumatic stress disorder. And I started seeing my mother paid for a private therapist for me to go to. And when I first started with him, I asked him this question. And I'm going to ask you this question, Karen, too. It's very important for what we do from here on forward. And that is, I need to ask you if you're going to respect my religious beliefs and practices and not condemn me as some kind of drug abuser for using cannabis as a holy sacrament of medicine.
Well, when you say, so cannabis is part of your religious belief?
Right, I'm a Rastafarian.
Okay. And can you explain to me what being a Rastafarian means to you?
Well, it means that God gave us cannabis as a holy sacrament, as was told to Moses, and we've forgotten about how important that is to that. It's a very important gift from the Creator to us, and I'm not going to get into the philosophy of Rastafari, but it's in the Bible. And I believe the Bible. I believe in the Bible. That's why I served in the military.
So it's biblically based, and what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And then, when you say you're using cannabis spiritually, how much? What does that involve? I mean, how much cannabis drugs do you use and how often, and do you even...
I smoke daily. I smoke before this, you know, I need to be able to think clearly and not be overly anxious to be able to come here and speak like this.
So
I medicated before the appointment. And, you know, I probably consume, my doctor recommends up to 1 gram a day. There's some days I don't use that much, or some days I use more than that. It's totally variable. It depends on the quality of medicine I'm able to obtain.
And you have a 215 recommendation then, or?
Yes.
And who is your doctor?
Hemp seed, or I'm sorry, hayseed.
Is he up in the mountains then, Dr. Hayseed, or down here?
Citrus Heights, California. Citrus Heights, California.
Oh, Citrus Heights, okay, so not in the area then. Well, so what makes you think you have PTSD? What?
Well, this all comes from the brutal murder of my oldest daughter in 1994. And when I was seeking treatment, you know, of course I had, you know, suicidal ideation, sleep, unable to sleep, eat, and I was having these yeah, I don't have the whole list because there's, you know, several, you know, symptoms for post-traumatic stress. But like one of the symptoms that I still suffer from, and like just happened the other day. Here's an example. I haven't been able to see my daughter. I have 2 daughters. My oldest daughter, Katie, she's deceased. She would be 24 years old now. And then I had another daughter 5 years ago, and next month she'll be 35. And some of the things that have happened between the two are very similar, even though I've tried to attain different results. Many of the situation is very similar, so there are things that are happening that are reminding me of Katie's death, making me think that that is what's happening, and it's like a flashback kind of thing. You know, I become very anxious. I can't concentrate. I can't think clearly. And then here again, that affects my sleep. That affects my interaction with other people because I withdraw usually. And this all goes back to, you know, how I was treated when I was discharged from the Navy, seeking treatment for what I suffer from.
And where were you in the Navy? Where were you stationed?
I was in the recruiting at the time of my discharge. NRS, Springfield, Missouri.
So you were stateside then?
Yes. Critical billing, recruiting.
And so when your daughter was killed, were you there? Did you see it? Did you tell me about that?
Well, the whole situation is kind of interesting about her. Is I had joined the Navy because I couldn't see her. I hadn't seen her for a couple of years, and then after I'd been in the Navy for 4 years, her mother approached me and wanted to smooth everything over and allow me to become her father. So there was some paperwork that had to be done, and that was done in the beginning of July. In fact, July 4th, over the July 4th holiday, because I was in San Diego going to school at that time. And I got the weekend off. I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, did this paperwork, had first time I'd seen my daughter in like 4 or 5 years or something like that, 6 years or something like that. And we got all that paperwork, taken care of, and I was going to finish school and come back at Christmas for another visit, because I knew I was going to finish my training and then I'd be permanently assigned to a ship someplace. So I knew that I would have some leave after I finished school, and I was planning to come back there and spend Christmas or the holidays with them and reestablish a relationship that hadn't been there for years, and I always desperately wanted. And so I went back to school, and I get a knock on the door, and the messenger's telling me to get to the schoolhouse so I can get an AMCROSS message. And at first I thought my father was having health problems, and I thought he'd had a heart attack or something. He was in the hospital or died. And when I got to the schoolhouse, the chief there, he just said, "You pay us from across. You need to get to the hospital as soon as possible." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, you need to get to the hospital." I was like, "Well, what for?" He's all like, "Oh, well, maybe you better read the message." So I read the message, and the message says basically, 2 days ago your daughter was kidnapped from her home. The fire department reported to a dumpster fire this morning. When they extinguished fire, they discovered the remains of a child. It's burnt beyond recognition. We have reason to believe that it may be your daughter. We need your blood for DNA testing. So, I sent off my that evening, waited in hell for a month, and it was her. That was my daughter. And it's strange because if I just found that out without reconciling and having her almost come back into my life, it wouldn't have been so traumatic. But after wanting after so many years, and then finally getting it, and then just gone. Nothing I can do about it. They've never found the person. It's very, nothing was ever done. So if I see like a show like CSI and these people like solve some kind of freaking weird ass freaking murder in like, an hour, I can't sit and watch that stuff because it makes me feel very marginalized. That where were them motherfuckers when my child was murdered? And then, I'm really glad I was in the Navy, because if I didn't have a job and something to do, I would have been lost. So, even though I went back to school, or when I went back to school the next day, I couldn't concentrate. Before the event, I had average marks. When I graduated, I was second to last. And that is very contrary to my experience in A school, where I was the second highest academically achieving student in my class.
What's your performance really?
And that's been exemplary of my performance throughout the Navy. I've always been a 4.0 sailor, somebody who did something, I always volunteered for the extra, duties. I was going to be a lifer. That's why I went recruiting, I had intentions of making it a career. Because recruiting, especially early in your career, I'd only been in for 7 years. I was hoping to make first class, get a meritorious advancement, because in my rating is very difficult to advance. And for me, being only in the Navy for 7 years and being a second class, a fire controlman second class at that time, was very difficult to do because advancement was so restricted. And, so I really had hopes of making first class, making the Navy a career, and I was totally betrayed, not offered the treatment that was ordered for me, politically, marginalized, and, I don't know, and it still continues today, within the VA. I'm still struggling to establish a service connection claim, and
so.
Oh, and that goes back to that guy. I'm sorry, I totally blew off that. But when I came to the VA, they denied me services, and I went and obtained private service.
Where was
this? This was in Sacramento, at May 3rd.
Okay.
In Sacramento. So my mom paid for private services, and I asked this guy, just like I asked you, hey, are my religious practices going to be a problem with my treatment? And during the first, session, he's all like, oh yeah, no problem. Oh, I do have a, I do frown upon that, and I usually look upon that as a problem, but, if you do have sincere beliefs and practices, and this is medicine, then, then that's okay. But then throughout treatment, he's urging me to take pharmaceuticals, and I told him each and every time that, most pharmaceuticals are not for me because most of those have a, suicidal ideation potential side effect, and I don't even want to try anything like that. I already got that going on. I don't need nothing. I don't need no help.
So you have suicidal thoughts? Then?
Yeah, they're all the time. I mean, it's not like I was sitting around with a shotgun in my mouth, but.
Do you have weapons at your place?
No. Okay. But, and that doesn't matter. It's just the thought that you are so hopeless that you would consider that as a positive option. I'm not for suicide. Too many of my friends have killed themselves, and I wouldn't do that to my friends or family. But I understand why they did it, because they lost all hope. And that's why I'm here today, because I have hope of rebuilding my life and having a family, having a relationship with my daughter, having a meaningful relationship with a woman, and I'm not sure what all the problems are. I don't know.
How would you rate your risk of, because, okay, it sounds like what you're telling me is about your symptoms are symptoms of depression. So, and you've got a service-connected, have you filed
Well, we refiled my paperwork to pursue just depression, because that's what I was being treated for when I left, and that's good enough to get service connection. That's what we're, are pursuing right now.
And you did that through the Veteran Service?
That was resubmitted back in June or July, and then I just submitted a request and everything at the end of September, and they finally got back to me, and I'm supposed to get a CSMP examination here pretty soon.
Did you mean a Compton 10?
Yeah, because I've been waiting for years for that, you know.
And is that at the VA San Francisco?
No, they say it was up at White City.
Or at White City? Were you at White City before?
No, it's just White City's only a little bit farther than here, from here.
So from where
For
you
me,
are.
for me,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just not hearing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, okay, and here's a trigger. You know, my Katie lost she had all her teeth knocked out before she was brutally raped. And,
How old is she? 5?
my daughter now is approximately the age of Katie when she was murdered.
Okay, got it. Katie is the daughter that died.
Mm-hmm. And, like, when I was living in Columbus, I had these delusions that the layout of the house was similar to the house that Katie lived in when she was murdered. And it brought me great distress. I couldn't sleep. I told this to Lori, Bella's mother. I was sharing this with her, trying to, you know, figure out what was going on with it. I was sharing this with my therapist at the time, you know, what's going on with this. And it wasn't until she told me, laid $500 on the table and just told me to leave, that I stopped. I actually broke out Katie's death certificate, and there were 3 addresses on it. And one where she supposedly lived, one where her mother supposedly lived, and the location where her body was found. I didn't go to that location, but I went to the other 2 homes, and I knocked on the door of this one man, or of the home that she actually lived in, and thank goodness it wasn't at all like the house that I was living in. But I was convinced, and your memory is affected in PTSD. You have memory problems and weird memory associations and things like this. This is PTSD, and it brings up instant emotional, physiological reactions. I have that. That happens to me often. That is PTSD. That's not depression. And anyway, what happened just the other day is Lori sent me a picture of Bella dressed up for Halloween. And just prior to this, we're having a tip on support and everything right now because VA is not giving me anything extra, and what I'm getting right now is insufficient to even support myself, let alone send her any extra money. But she sent me an email a couple days before saying that she needed my address and that Bella was going to get 10 teeth pulled the next day or something like that. And that just triggered a reaction, you know, or you know, and ever since then I've been very, I haven't slept very well the last couple of 3 days. I've been very anxious. I haven't been able to get very, you know, because that's what happened to Katie before she died. It's almost just like it. I think that's what's going to happen to her. And it's just very...
It's a trigger for you.
Yes, it's very much a trigger. And there are very many things like that, just weird little things like that that happen that are triggers and can totally fucked my day. Totally turned my mood. Totally, and it's very disturbing. And I realize this now. I mean, after suffering for this for years, I never understood why certain things, or why I didn't want to do certain things, like go to college again. I totally resisted going to college again. Why did I do that? Because I was in school when I found out about Katie's death. And I didn't do very well, and I haven't done very well in school ever since. Every course that I've ever taken in the Navy, I've struggled through. And I'm a very good learner. I'm a very, but it's.
And did you work after you got out of the Navy?
It was very difficult for me to find work. I worked as a telemarketer at a couple of different companies. I was a freaking cashier at a convenience store. Got fired from there. I got fired from all these jobs because I wasn't able to perform up to their standards. It wasn't because I wasn't showing up or doing screwed up shit. I just could not meet their requirements. And I was trying my hardest. And I didn't get a sustainable job until I was driving a truck. But still, the reason that I had to I was working for this one company, and there was, some messed up stuff, and I was really emotionally charged, and I had an accident, and that happened like twice, and so I got fired.
So the benefits you're getting from the VA now would be the non-service connected benefits?
Yeah, I guess pension or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like a benefit that anybody can get if they're not able to work.
I guess.
So you're going for a service-connected rating. That'll increase your income. Is that right?
Yes. Well, no, I'm doing it just for services because I wasn't even able to do this. I wasn't even able to get services like this until I went to the VA in Columbus. When I went to the VA in Sacramento, they straight up refused me services because I was not an Afghanistan or Iraqi vet.
Was that a vet center that you went to? Or
No, this was Mayfair Hospital.
Oh.
VA hospital. They had, plenty of services available, I would hope.
Well, let me tell you how I think I can help you. I do think you have anxiety. You don't meet the criteria for PTSD according to our diagnostic manual.
Well, we haven't gone through, let me tell you, I can sit here with the diagnostic manual things and I can explain my symptoms. I don't have that here right now, but